Welcome back. It's time for Opinion Court. Please reach out to us 22422. That's our SMS line on Twitter and Facebook. We're at Citizen TV Kenya. Please use the hashtag Opinion Court. It allows us to track your conversation on the same. I want to reintroduce my panel to you really quickly. To my immediate right is the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, Cecily Kariuki. Next to her, Edward Kisiangani, our resident political analyst. Next to him, Kiminini MP Chris Wamalwa and economist Karevi Murimi joining us. Karevi, I want to start with you and pick up from where we left off with Chris. And his argument basically is that it does matter what kind of sugar Kenya is facing a deficit in, and that will affect our local industry. Is that in fact the case?
I think you need both. You need to isolate what you would call refined industrial sugar, and you also need to isolate what the country calls the consumable sugar. You also need to challenge yourself why our industries cannot produce refined sugar. What is so special in not being able to produce refined sugar? And that question has been on the table from 1989. So all policy papers from 89 have challenged manufacturers of the sugar industry to see why they cannot be able to produce refined sugar.
But in as far as his argument is concerned, and generally the court argument that somehow importing sugar from Uganda, this particular deal or lack thereof, if you're going with the government's narrative, is going to effectively kill our industries. Is that really the case, or is the case that we have a sugar industry that whether you're importing from Uganda or Lord knows where else, unless we sort out the real problems in terms of the cost of production of sugar, perhaps the time it's taking this cane to grow, etc., that we're not fixing anything? Is the deal the problem, or is the industry facing other problems?
I think what we need to do is to take back what we call policy reforms in agriculture. The word maize, wheat, rice, all those were indirectly completed by 1994. The only major crop that is yet to be fixed is actually sugar. And if you read World Bank reports which were made by 1989, the word "we shall fix sugar the following year" is one of the sentences in the structural and adjustment study. In short, what we are saying is the fundamentals of the total sugar industry, both in terms of what is economic rad size to produce an effective unit cost which is competitive both for the farmer and for the industry. The type of industry that you call sugar industry, if you are competing in terms of large scale, you are aware of the debate whether we can produce sugar in the Tana Belt and all those.
Right.
So there are a bit of reform question marks which have been hanging over years. The latest being the privatization debate. But what we need to understand is that in the process of the policy reform not happening on time, the ordinary sugar farmer, his actual income has been going down. So it's important for us not to take the issue as a Uganda activity. I think it should be looked at from a holistic perspective. And this is where now we should challenge ourselves. What actual policy solutions are we putting on the table? Because if you talk privatization, just to finish,
right,
was somebody doing a delay so that the unit price of the asset goes down? So these are questions which should be coming to the debate. And I don't want the MPs to narrow the Uganda in quotes activity to be the problem in the world sugar.
Let's put the question this way to the PS. Has the government been stalling in effecting the reforms that we need to save Kenya's sugar industry so that either A, as Karevi is saying, somebody can benefit when it's time to sell off, these factories, or is it B, that the government has taken a position that sugar is not a viable industry to spend, the colossal amounts of money that will be needed to revive companies such as Mumias?
Let me put it this way. I think, and just responding back to your initial inquiry, I think if we reduce this discussion to Uganda and Kenya in terms of the deficit position, is also to miss the point. The government has, over the years, been walking a journey which One, in terms of the privatization, we are almost at the tail end now. A decision which was taken in 2010 that 5 of the public mills were to be privatized, but because it was necessary that engagement and the stakeholders be carried along, it has taken it as until now. We are now rolling out an engagement strategy with the would-be affected stakeholders, including the leaders in the counties. And so that is the journey that we are walking. And so there was nothing deliberate to occasion the delay. You do recall after 2010, then there was a change in administration. The 11th Parliament came in, they needed to buy in the idea, and it took a bit of time to walk through that journey. So we are moving on that. We are moving forward. But looking at the fundamentals in terms of production and competitiveness of the sector, I think again, the government has decisively been walking the journey. And that is why only 2 months ago you saw that there was money allocated to one Mumias company. That is a private company, because we do believe until we have a proper diversification strategy for the farmers who currently are relying on sugar, we cannot walk out on the fact. Granted, it is uncompetitive on account of several facts. The land tenure system, the parcels of the land are too few, too small rather. We are relying on raid fence as opposed to the more competitive producers of sugar. We are relying on old varieties of cane which have hitherto called now for the need to be replaced using the newer varieties that have come into the marketplace. Importantly, the whole infrastructure and that whole environment of the logistics moving cane from farm to the miller is inefficient because of the road network. Issues that we have been fixing over and over, but you cannot say you can put them to a closure, because sugar, like all the other sectors, is competing for a basket of resources which is servicing all the other agricultural economies.
Chris, would you agree?
First and foremost, I don't want to agree with my brother Karidhi here. When you read Article 95 of the Constitution, it's clearly stipulated that Member of Parliament is there to resolve issues that affect the people. And why the issue of Uganda is critical that we should not run away from, it is because His Excellency the President had just come from Uganda. It was a government to government, and it was a bilateral discussion. And within our Constitution, it also says that any international treaty, whatever it is, it must be subjected to Parliament. So the issue here is this. It was government to government, issues were discussed. We heard about the communique, which was stipulated clearly here by the leader of majority, that we should get sugar from Uganda. And as I said earlier, the 200 metric tons, this was a study which was done, I think, in 1989, when the structural adjustment programs were being brought to this country. So it's a pity that Madam Pierce doesn't have the latest statistics as far as the status of the sugar level is concerned, the issue of deficit and surplus. It is the responsibility of the government to carry out a study and tell Kenyans what is the level of deficit that we have at the moment. But when you come and say Uganda to supply sugar to this country, it's a lie. Because the cartels want to bring the sugar through Uganda in a cheap way to kill the sugar industry in this country and impoverish our farmers.
And that argument is premised on the allegation of conflicting figures where you're claiming that Uganda does not have a surplus, while the Ugandan manufacturers are saying that in fact they have. So in as far...
We need to know a surplus of what? As I said earlier, we need to know what is the deficit about. He has mentioned clearly, the bulk of the deficit is to do with the refinery sugar that our local industry does not manufacture. So if it is an issue of closing the gap of deficit, and this is the sugar that Coca-Cola needs, breweries need, but not the table sugar we are talking about that is killing the farmers of Mumias.
But whichever sugar, I suppose my point is this, whichever sugar it is, we're saying that for use here, be it in industry or at home when I'm taking my chai, that there is a deficit of sugar existing, that it needs to be met by someone, and that preferably obviously COMESA and EAC, correct. My question to you is whether you feel, whether it is an honest argument that Kenya doing business with Uganda is what is going to kill.
I think one major point which we need to be clear, because members of parliament owe a duty to the people who elected them. Parliamentary Agriculture Committee investigated the word sugar. You actually went all the way to Mombasa, if you remember. Your own chair, Buki, Honorable, was photoed in warehouse talking of...
Buki is not the chair.
No, I'm saying that time when he was talking.
He has never been the chair.
But he's a member of the Agriculture Committee.
He's a member, but he's never been the chair.
He's the one who talked that time. Actually seeing imported sugar in quote by Mumias in warehouse. Okay, so what I think we need to be open to ourselves, because that report was tabled in the House. Due people rejected it as a report as a House. What we need to be sensitive. One minute. Let me finish. Let me finish the point. Let me finish the point.
Let him finish
Let me finish
the Uganda deal.
Mheshimiwa, please, let me finish the point.
Okay.
It's irrelevant whether the sugar that destroys the farmers is from Uganda, Brazil. The question is, members of parliament, under the article you have quoted on oversight, have failed to oversight the coming into the country of illegal sugar, of cheap sugar. Now, whether it is by way of design or by way of agreement internally as members, the Uganda problem brings the debate to the table. So to me, I'm looking at the debate in a bigger issue. How do we fix what, in quote, destroys the sugar industry?
Which is not trading with Uganda, is your point. Professor,
you see, Anne, my contribution to this debate, which is taking a lot of time and we're missing some main issues in this item, is first of all, I want to say shame on the government. Shame on the government for a matter like this one, which should not be occupying our time. The government should just publish in the local dailies the agreement. So that all the public, all of us in the public can read, and then make what? Make our conclusion. So they shouldn't be putting us in this kind of anxiety.
The government
wait, I finish my statement. But also shame on the opposition. Shame on you, including Uhuru. I mean, Chris, for also issuing speculative information to the public. And you don't seem even to have the figures, and you want to get political mileage, mileage out of this.
We have the figures.
The veracity of your figures is contestable because when the government is issuing its own. You are leaders. You can even lock yourself in the room tomorrow and agree on the figures and talk to the Kenyan people. So shame on you. But what I would like you to understand is this. When you go to Western Province and Western Kenya and you're discussing the sugar factor, I want to tell you, Chris, be honest with the people who voted for you. The sugar industry is dead.
We are very honest.
But it has not died because of the current administration. It died because even some people within the Western region, the leadership of Western region contributed to this. It's dying. So you now are blaming the Uganda issue. If you go to any supermarket, Chris, right now, you have never raised this objection. I have been buying sugar in the supermarket. Some sugar has a label for Mumias, but some has no label. You know very well that there has already been sugar coming in, maybe from Uganda, as the PS put it, or from other places, but you have never complained. So how come when a situation like this one arises where they say sugar is coming from Uganda, you start raising objections? My thinking is that there is a group in your team which is desperate to keep the political vote of Western Province so that it can be used. And remember, sugar is a slave crop. And you are trying to put people in a situation where they only see the economic liberation in terms of sugar. You know very well, Chris, you can advise those people that if sugar cane is not growing, is not working, there are options for that. You are not addressing that. This sugar industry, our economist has talked about it, and it started collapsing many years back. What is the contribution of each of the members of the sugar belt in terms of addressing the sugar issues? How many of them have come out with a blueprint to address these things?
Prof, let's hold it there. You've asked two important questions. Chris, I want you to respond, and then PS to respond to what are the details of that committee.
Now, the issue of our sugar not being competitive, and PS had mentioned it, really, when you look at our production, it's actually in small scale. And when you look at many other areas where sugar is profitable, you find that the products are diversified. They are producing ethanol, they are producing power. So sugar is coming out as a byproduct, okay? And again, when you look at production, where we have small scales, you don't enjoy economies of scale. So we really actually have to increase as far as the production scale is concerned for our farmers to enjoy economies of scale so that the production cost per unit goes down. Again, when you look at the technology in our sugar industry is outdated.
Why?
So it is indeed, it's of course, it's obsolete. So it did some replacement. And for the replacement to be done, you need to look for a strategic investor to come in with capital that you can modernize in terms of the technology so that it improves the level of efficiency. Right. And again, you diversify the products. So whatever you produce is going to have a lower production cost, and as such you put up a small markup so that you can be able to compete.
What is interesting about what you're saying, Chris, is that you seem to just be agreeing basically with what Karemi is saying.
Absolutely, I'm not rejecting.
The issue is not Uganda.
Absolutely, but the issue here, let me bring in why the Uganda issue is important.
Right, go ahead.
This was government to government, and this communique has not been publicized. We don't know. We want it to come out, and Madam Cecil is here. I'm sure she's in the delegation to bring out clearly and tell us what was it agreed. Because you saw on TV, Adan Duale say this, we are going to exchange in terms of dairy. Who is this person of dairy? No, we know KCC has gone down. Let me finish. Kenya Meat Commission cannot export.
Allow him to.
Absolutely. So the issue when we talk about you're going to exchange in terms of sugar, we need to understand. If it's meat, it's Kenya Meat Commission. Kenya Meat Commission is on its knees. When it comes to milk, does UKCC has the capacity to export milk?
You're saying that this is private business that's going to benefit?
Absolutely.
Fair enough.
And if they do that, we don't need the government. Private business can have their own...
Professor, I want to... Professor, let's allow the PS to respond.
And again, the 200 grams is refined sugar, not the table sugar.
And I appreciate your point. Prof, I must overrule you. Allow Madam to respond.
Thank you. This is the disadvantage of not being a politician on a platform like this.
You got shot like that.
But I think it is very fair that politicians rely on statistics that the executive holds for them to take a position. And I want to say for the armed time, no treaty, no trade pact was signed by the government of Kenya with the government of Uganda. I will say that today, I will say that tomorrow, I will say that the day after.
So can we see the communique?
Let me put it this way. Let me put it this way. The issue of importing tea, you know, I'm about tea all my life. Sugar from Uganda into Kenya is not a this week issue. It has been going on last month, last year, the year before. It will go on until we are able to bring our industry to a level of competitiveness to meet the shortfall of 200,000 metric tons. Now, we are walking the journey. It is not desirable that we should remain a net deficient country. So we are walking the journey, and that's why I articulated the measures we are taking to bring the industry to a level of competitiveness, in addition to working on a more facilitative investment destination where we are attracting additional investors into this country. That is in addition to privatization. That is in addition to supporting the existing small-scale growers as we exit them to other farming enterprises. For the first time, we have invested heavily in subsidized fertilizer for the farmers in Western Kenya. For the first time, we have put in upwards of 1.5 billion on soft loans to the farmers on the same side. For the first time in the last 1 year, we have put in 350 million shillings on the road infrastructure within that area. Why? To work towards competitiveness. 21 new varieties of cane have been developed. Differ, but let me finish on this particular one. But let's not run away from the fact. The Hulabaloo in the last 2 days has been a trade pact was signed. No trade pact was signed. The communique, if I may, touched on the need for us to ease the cross-border trade on sugar among other commodities, on issues to do with the clearing the issues around Migingo Island, issues to do with the movement of persons across the boundary, the border, and the whole range of it. Now, if we say Kenyans should be waiting for us to publish a treaty that was signed, I think we are also now failing in our duty to oversight responsibly.
And I think, PS, that is the point. You are taking measures. What this debate should be doing now is to interrogate the measures you are taking, and including the MPs from the sugar belt asking, are they looking at the methodology of making sugar production more profitable? Let's pick the case of Egypt. Egypt does not have rain, but Egypt is producing sugar in large quantities, and nothing goes to waste. Today, Egypt is producing pepper out of the sugar bagasse.
Right.
316 million thousand tons every year of bagasse goes to the production of paper. Some of the paper that is in Kenya, which is being used for photocopying, comes from Egypt. It has now moved a step further. It's also using rice husks to extra things coming out of the sugar industry. Now, look at Western. Our leadership in Western do not even want to make that suggestion that let us have the sugar producing zones like in Nzoia and Mumias add more value so that, as Chris puts it, sugar even becomes a byproduct. But the products that come out of sugar can produce ethanol, can also produce paper, which we have a shortage about. They will tell you they want to resurrect Pan-African paper mills, which is using trees. There is only one country in the world which can use trees to produce paper, that is Canada. We need 10% plus of our forest cover. They'll say go and service machines whose technology was imported from Holland in 1930s, exported to India in 1947, and it arrived in Kenya in 1974. It's obsolete. That is what we want to service.
Let me put it this way.
So you are asking the government to service a dead industry under the current circumstances. So the bigger question is, what kind of changes can we undertake if we want to produce sugar? But if we don't want to produce sugar,
let me pause you there.
If we don't want to produce sugar, tell these guys to quit the sugar production until it becomes what? Competitive.
I want to rephrase your question, Prof. Because you're talking about how much basically it's going to cost to get this industry to a competitive space. Karevi has disputed, the amount of time it has taken government to put in place those measures, which are also questionable as to whether or not they will in fact revive the industry. Karemi, let me ask you this. Are we holding on to sugar purely for sentimental reasons? Are we holding on to sugar which is giving diminishing returns to the farmer to keep them impoverished, whereas they can be given another more viable economic activity to, undertake?
Let's first get the fundamentals. Within our Constitution, under Article 2.6, all treaties already signed by Kenya form part and parcel of our laws. And Mheshimiwa, you are a lawyer, you know that. The Common East African Customs Union was signed and it came into effect January 2007, long before Uhuru became president, long before Jubilee took power, long before the World Code was formed. What we need to start debating is, when that Custom Union Protocol was signed in 2007, the word sugar will be affected, has always been a subject, and all of us are aware of that. The request to postpone implementation of COMESA quota has always been a request that government of Kenya puts to the other members. That period officially finishes in 2015. So it's not a secret. The question I'm putting on the table is, what were we preparing as the alternative, assuming we knew that we have this challenge? Okay. Now let me be very personal. If I'm a leader in Western Kenya and I hear the president has agreed that we can import sugar, I would get Mumias Farmers Circle, okay? I would go to the minister through the PS and say, can we have a permit to bring sugar as Mumias Circle? Now, it may sound radical, but the profit now that they will make from selling that sugar is their profit as farmers. In the short, I'm saying, are we genuine that we want these farmers to get out of poverty? It is not fair for a system of government, and I want to be very personal because I've been in this industry for long. Anybody who produces wheat with less than 50 acres makes a loss. Those are recorded facts and research. Anybody producing any sugarcane with less than 70 acres makes a loss. And it's not. So the question on the table is, why are we as leaders not addressing the basic fundamentals of the structure of the industry? Is what you're saying. Why are we not growing soybean? So why are we not putting horticulture in Western?
So if I were the one,
and they have rain.
If, for example, we assume that the government had actually signed a treaty with Uganda, my brother, what I would have done myself is to go and tell the Western region farmers that now try to start buying dairy cattle and start selling the milk to the Uganda market. Abandon the sugar. Because that is
in fact, let me be honest with you. On the word, just 1 minute.
Yes, but
on the word meat.
Karimi, we need to allow everyone to respond.
Yeah, that's okay. But just 1 minute on the meat. Just 1 minute. Yeah, I will allow you. Just 1 minute on the meat. The biggest request for meat, because this is not something which is not known. It's a KEPSA request. It's a Kenya National Chamber of Commerce request. The actual meat function is a chicken request. And the biggest market that is missing the Uganda market is Western Kenya chicken growers.
Thank you. Yeah. Now, Anne, it is the responsibility of the government to take care of the interests of the people. I'll give an example of Turkey. Turkey produces tea. And by the way, our tea and the tea of Turkey, you can't compare in terms of quality. But I remember the president of Turkey said, we can't allow the tea to come from Kenya because our tea, when it goes there, the taxation put on it is very high. This is to take care of the interests of the local livelihood. In this country, you can't come and purport and say we allow sugar to be imported as tax-free. We cannot. We must take care of the interests of the farmers, of the industry. It's a source of livelihood, and that is the responsibility of the government. What DS said, and which I want to differ, he said about the issue of subsidized fertilizer. What quantity of subsidized fertilizer do you bring in this country compared to the really demand? We've had these issues. I brought a bill in Parliament. Fertilizer has also been a source of corruption because this fertilizer comes, it's like a drop in the ocean, okay? And it comes at the wrong timing. When you've already finished the planting, it's when you see subsidized fertilizer comes, it can't even reach anywhere. So, Madam PS, you can't come here and say that the government has put measures in place, has produced subsidized fertilizer. No! It is totally insignificant.
Now you are questioning the correct way. You have now gotten on the track.
So, I'm trying to...
Okay, Chris, hold on. Madam PS, allow me to rephrase the question to you this way. Are we saying that we should have, I think court is saying we need more protectionist measures.
Absolutely.
How does that compare to government policy in as far as COMESA and EAC is concerned?
And it is so simple, and Karedi just alluded to this. The minute we got into the East Africa Protocol, we agreed we are moving as one common market, period. We have to operate under what we call the CET, subjecting all of us to that. So to now come and begin indicating that we can wake up tomorrow and decide we are going to increase the duty on our tea, on our sugar as a single country. We must go back to the members within the community and negotiate that.
The challenge is
because I think, Chris,
let her finish.
Mheshimiwa Chris, I would invite you to go and understand the East Africa Protocol.
No, I do
and
understand.
The EAC, and the EAC, obligations and that treaty, and what we ceded as a country, and what we are also looking to give. And that is why we can't even argue this Uganda issue as a one-way traffic. Trade flows both ways. There is that we are going to benefit because we are either not competitive or we are working to develop the sector. And there is that they are going to benefit because we have a more superior product and our productivity. But allow me to finish also. If we bring in the issue of now questioning as to the accuracy of my statement on fertilizer, again we miss the point. We'd start now diverting the attention of the Kenyan who is watching. The Kenyan today wanted to listen and hear. Did the President, His Excellency the President, sign a trade pact with his counterpart in Uganda or not? I think that's what we must tell Kenyans. And we must tell Kenyans and confirm, was it necessary? Even though we start talking, one, I confirmed that there was no trade pact signed on sugar, no beef, and we are narrowing it to the two products because I think there must be some interpretation that you have that perhaps I don't have. But like I said, if it's two-way traffic, the negotiation goes around the table. If we are taking in your sugar, we've been taking, we'll continue taking for the gap. Are you also not going to take the products that we think we have a competitive advantage? That's how it goes.
I want to ask a final question, and we must wind up. We're out of time. I want you to respond to what Karimi has said, which is basically that when we insist on sugar as being the quote-unquote savior of the Western region, what we are playing is politics of poverty. And that in the absence of government policy which can go back to the people of Western and say, look, you've got great land, rich land, we can invest in this, that, and the other, which can actually bring better yield much faster, much cheaper. That the government in itself is playing a 2017 game when it gives Mumias 1 billion shillings, knowing full well that if we're going to revive this industry, it's going to take a whole lot more money that we're not willing to inject right now to save sugar.
My observation is as follows. We cannot turn the corner one day. We have to put in strategies and mechanisms for us to support the farmers as we exit them from this not very rewarding sector. And what we are doing, there is mention of soya. We have recently introduced soybean farming within the region, performing extremely well, and we intend to expand that. We also are focusing on livestock, dairy, and the small ruminants, and the whole livestock subsector ecosystem, because that can be supported within that economy. In the meantime, I think the strategies that we are making in terms of bringing the private sector to come and turn around, we still do believe where there are larger parcels of land, sugar can still pay. And that is how Mumias, until there were issues of mismanagement, was able to carry on. We need to invest with the farmers, we need to invest in the infrastructure, we need to invest at the milling, we need to bring in issues, governance, and make sure that all the bits and pieces are falling in place.
I'm taking a final round of comments. Prof, let me start with you, and please bear in mind, I believe the Deputy President is expected to start a tour of the Western region, possibly tomorrow or this weekend. How does this new debate affect the politics of Western?
If you quit economics for a short while, and then you just think politics, that are related anyway, you now see that this kind of situation, sugar in Western Kenya, is a hot political issue. A hot political issue in the sense that recently the president has been going there. He has looked like the savior of the region with regards to sugar problems. But now, with this Ugandan thing, that's why I say shame on government. The way it handles it is very critical, because already the political opponents of the Jubilee administration have already laid their ground, and they are saying you are bringing down the sugar factory that brings certain comfort to the people, and if they don't manage it well, it can easily work against them in 2017. But for the president, for the Jubilee administration, if the president actually comes out in the open, not the way he did it yesterday against Raila Odinga, he goes and sends guys like the PS to go and explain to the people there was no agreement. This is what we are doing in the sugar factory. This ball can be turned against the CORD administration coalition, and it can completely destroy their chances in the Western province. So it is about harvesting the situation in Western, and whoever wins will be a happy person. And Chris is one of them.
My issue is this. Can the government publicize this communique so that we'll be able to know who is lying? Because we are having two different statements from the same government, which is actually a big pity. So, Madam PS, with due respect, can you ensure that that communique it is in tomorrow's paper or whatever the case, so that we can analyze it critically?
Which two different positions by government, Chris? Which two positions?
Majority Leader Aden Duale was here. And that's what he said.
Did he give?
That's what he said. And he said this. Maybe you're not listening.
I did.
Yeah. No. He represents the government in legislature. And that's what he says.
He said
all the government bills, he's the one who brings.
Did he say
and he said this. He said this. That we are going to import sugar, and in the exchange, we are going to export milk and meat.
It may be a statement of intention.
So can we say you bring this communication,
Chris,
you bring this
we're running out of
officially
time,
so that we'll be able to debate from an informed perspective.
Yes.
And lastly,
publish the
1 billion that went to Mumias Sugar, that was a drop in the ocean. Because in terms of indebtedness right now, Mumias is on the tune of 8 billion. And 500 million that was given, it was from the sugar levy, which it is like a loan it has to pay back. The 500 that came from Treasury, it increased its government shareholding. So there's no grant at all that was given to Mumias as far as we are concerned.
Who brought down Mumias?
Thank you.
It is the government to tell us.
Let's allow Karimi.
I don't know who brought down Mumias.
To make his final views.
I think I want to request what I would call the executive and the relevant committee of parliament to pick the word, we are in a customs union. What are the real challenge questions that need to be tackled? Because sugar is of course a major issue, but I'm sure there are other crops. Very soon, you remember the debate of maize when we had maize coming from Tanzania, and there was that whole abaru from the Rift Valley MPs. So let's prepare for real answers for farmers. That's number one. Number two, I would want to encourage the current parliament to be very clear that you hate poverty. so that officially you actually have the voter not by mouth, not by wanting him to vote, but by getting him out of real poverty, by giving actual information. Because the moment you have a customs union, you need to sit with those farmers and transition them to where they should now put their energy and effort. It is not right, and I repeat, it's not right to allow any farmer in Kenya under Article 43 to economically make a loss.
Fair enough. P.S.
Thank you. To the professor, I think government has no reason to be ashamed, so I will request you take that back as I leave. And for the reason that any responsible government must make sure where there is a deficit, the consumer is not exposed and does not suffer. And that is why we must continue to import with care and caution and within set mechanism, so that the consumer also has the sugar that they require. On the one hand, it is not sustainable, and that is why we are putting in mechanisms to be able to get to a point of fulfilling our own requirements as a country. It's a journey. We are working, we are determined, and we'll get there. What we require is when you get out, Mheshimiwa Chris and your colleagues, please ask for facts so that you also do not mislead Kenyans. If we had done this on Monday evening, we would not be saying government is having two positions. There's only one position. No trade pact was signed. We negotiated cross-border trade and how to ease cross-border, and sugar happens to be one of those commodities, and so does beef, and so does maize, and so do the other commodities that are traded across the board.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your views. You're back with the business news after this. Don't go away.
On Slim Possible last week, we unveiled the 21 contestants of Slim Possible Season 6. This week, they hit the gym. Find out who will lose the most weight in the first week of working out at the gym and eating healthy. Catch Slim Possible Season 6 with Lillian Mooley this Friday at 9:50 p.m.
Perfection. That elusive thing we all strive for. The thing we often miss our whole lives. But when you take a sip of our brandy, you know there is nothing to criticize. Well, almost nothing. So we perfected perfection. We improved on the cap to a non-refillable cap. Now, all that's left is for you to experience the new look Legend Brandy for yourself. Legend Brandy, the perfectly blended African brandy.
Quickly pay your bills, do cash transfers to other bank accounts, receive salary advances, and more. Download the app now from the Google Play or Apple App Store. CFC Stanbic Bank, moving forward.
When people look at me, they see what they want to see. They don't really know me. They don't look past the surface to what's inside. Am I pretending? Or are you just too blind to see that there's so much more to me? There's something unique inside me. That thing that's so rare, that makes me me. I let go when you're not looking. When you least expect it. I surprise you. Because the only time I'm truly free is when I'm just me. See my true colors. See the true me. Trust condoms. Kuwa true. Ask me anything. I know everything about cows.
Shida ya ndama ni nini? The ndama has refused.
Babu, why has the ndama refused?
The ndama has refused to drink her mama's milk because her mama has gone crazy.
Babu, that might kill a better drama if it's Tuzo.
The little experts know that wholesome Tuzo is full of all the taste, health, and joy they need.
Wewe ni expert wa ng'ombe, lakini sisi ni expert wa maziwa.
Pour out Tuzo for your family.
Tuzo, ladha ya upendo.
SemaDoc is a new, complete medical plan that gives you access to a doctor on call 24/7. A health account with instant loan and 5,000 shillings hospital cash benefit for only 300 shillings per month.
Hello, doctor.
Call over some friends and have them call over more friends. Let the drinks start flowing and join the Blue Moon party that never ends. Now get your bottles and join the party. Blue Moon Premium Vodka. My style, my drink. Not for sale to persons under the age of 18. Please drink responsibly.
This is similar to a nutrient-rich one-dish meal, especially if it's topped with veggies. This sandwich is loaded with protein and has more than 10% of your daily intake of 11 vitamins and minerals.
I'll be alright. I'll be alright.
Thank you for staying with us. Welcome to the